Bill, your turn.
My turn. Okay, so I'm Bill Underwood. I was one of the co-founders of Catalyst Consulting Team. My work is primarily focused in working with core leadership teams and working with them over an extended period of time to help them be more skillful in their own decision making or their work together so that they're more healthy as well. So I work with as small as companies as, like right now, I'm the fourth person with 3 co-founders who have just started their startup. They're about 4 months into it, to as large of a company as Clorox, and I work with their executive team and help them with their offsite. So it's quite a span of different types of companies. I also do some leadership development. So some companies are looking for building in a language and processes and systems for how to manage teams. It's funny, I got involved with Google, by the way, back when they didn't want to have managers. They thought they could just hire the brightest people they could, throw them in a building, and say, go off and self-organize. And they had a revolution on their hands, basically, and so I was involved with helping them use the information they got from the research they did in Project Oxygen and building out their leadership curriculum. That's enough. I've been here since, actually, my little story in getting here, I did an event with the Legal Aid Association in Santa Cruz and fell in love with Santa Cruz while I was living in Washington, D.C. And lo and behold, about 3 months later, Boston University said, you know, we want to open up executive education in California, in this place called Santa Cruz. And about that time, Chaminade was just opening up. And they said, we're going to run those retreats or educational programs out of Chaminade. Would you like to go to Santa Cruz? And lo and behold, I sold everything I had, got in my car and drove out, and I knew I wasn't going back to the East Coast. And so I've been here since. I love it here, and it's a pleasure to meet a lot of unfamiliar faces in Santa Cruz and hopefully form some relationships. And why don't I get on with the show? So, you know, I went through trying to think about what's my intention here. And I went to the site, and it says this is a place to provide a space for people to have discussion, reflection, and I'm going to focus on strategic decision-making. And with you, let's see if we can create a little bit of a community experience here. So that means you guys get to interrupt me, ask questions, talk with one another about your experiences. But my theme here is to provide you an opportunity to explore how to enhance your decision-making, strategic decisions. And I have a premise that it requires a framework, some kind of framework to help you break down ideas and apply skills for decision groups. So I'll talk about that. So we are going to focus on a framework. I'm going to just share one that I have used quite often. But I work with groups that have their own. So it's not like I'm pushing one that I think is the best. You have to figure out something that's going to work for your group. But I really want to focus on some of the tools and practices of how do you facilitate discussion and dialogue. And the premise here is that it takes discipline to keep you in the frame of exploratory thinking as well as critical analysis, and that managing people's assumptions, mental models, how they're viewing the business is crucial in the discussion. Hopefully that people learn and they update their mental models. So that's a crucial element, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So you all are experienced in making decisions in groups. in strategic decisions. So, in your own experience, what makes strategic decision making tough, hard? Why can't it be hard? Yes.
I think it's, my experience has been that it's wanting to get executive team buy-in, but having differing perspectives on the subject at hand.
Is this the right marker?
Yeah.
So getting executive buy-in?
But based in the fact that there's differing perspectives within each of the team members, or can be differing perspectives. How do you learn perspectives before a decision is made?
Yes, and that's actually the good news and the bad news, right? Because you want a diverse set of perspectives, but how do you turn that corner and start converging on something that you're going to do? And then you've got to raise that with another group, the executives, who also have their perspective. Yes?
I think that a lot of times companies either don't have enough research or have the wrong information on which to base the decision.
Yeah, so they don't have enough research, excuse my spelling, or the research is not helpful.
Yeah.
The wrong information.
Yeah.
Okay, what else? Pop it out. What else? Yes?
Volume of the voices in the room. You often have some people that are really loud and very opinionated, and actually making space for those different perspectives is important.
Yes, just keep naming it out. You can just popcorn it out.
Fast industry change.
Yeah.
Alignment of objectives?
Inertia.
Say more what you mean by that.
People want to stay with what's comfortable, and they're maybe intimidated by the idea of making a strategic decision that's going to involve a lot of change and transformation.
That's it. I think we got.
I think that last point's a lot of like what the innovator's dilemma kind of talks about, how
Yeah.
people really stick to their core line, and even if they see their market share going down or innovation potentially displacing them.
Not only that, they don't see it.
Mm-hmm.
You can show it to them, right, over and over again, and they still doesn't change their mental model.
Lack
Yep.
of vision.
So a lack of vision.
Lack of emotional safety, so perspectives don't get shared as often.
Okay. I think we're creating a pretty good headache here. Anything else?
Kind of the elephant in the room scenario. So
Oh, the
knows-
elephant in the room, yes.
Everyone knows what the real issue is, but nobody talks about it, or kind of afraid to open that box of Pandora.
Which is highly connected to the
Yeah,
emotional
pretty much,
safety.
yeah.
Ego.
Ego. And what do you mean by that? That's a psychological term?
I would call it people who are very personally identified with a particular perspective to the degree that they diminish all others and don't even look at other possibilities.
Yeah, I was going to say the core problem is we're dealing with people. And,
Oh, yeah, I know. Just get rid of that. And we're working on that. We're working hard on that. So I say more, I'm teasing, but working with people means.
Yeah, well, it's just like we have the adage that business isn't personal, but the reality is it's essentially inherently personal. And so those ideas of ego and emotion and things like that are not, are human components have to factor in. You can't just ignore them.
Okay. So I'm yes.
Well, it's a little bit harder. Failing conventionally is more attractive than succeeding unconventionally.
Yes, that's right. That gets back to this one around, where do we see it? Buy-in, fast alignment. Stay with what's familiar, right? Sailing with what's comfortable versus taking the risk, right? All right.
It's just politics.
Well, I know, but what do you mean? So, say more about
The
that.
hippo, the highest paid person opinion, rules even though he's wrong because he's the boss.
Right.
And then you have these politics where people are like, all right, fine, I'm not gonna say what I'm gonna say, which ties into the rest of this. But the political structure and the way things, the culture of politics has a lot to do with what happens.
Okay, great. I think I'm running out of space, so this is good. All right. I don't have the purple pill that will solve this, but I will talk about many of the things you raised. It actually helps me frame. I have more, unless you want to stay all afternoon. I have more here than I have time to share. So bear with me. So just a couple of introductions around this. We often get confused when we're making options about strategy, whether it is a type 1 or type 2 decision. A type 1 is one where we're just going to place the bet and we're going for it. We're not headed back. We're burning the ships and we're headed into the land, or whatever analogy you want to use around that. Type 2 decisions are more incremental. We can try it, we can see if it lands, and we could move back from it. So I think it's helpful to make these distinctions, because then what happens is it eases people's capacity to try experimenting if it's a type 2 versus a type 1. However, if we're going to sail into a new direction and get away from this, Reed talks about if you're not genuinely pained by the risk involved in your strategic choices, it's not much of a strategy. So in this, I'm going to talk a little bit about the pain part of it, because that's where it takes courage, and we really want to be informed in our choice when we do this. So I'm not going to spend much time here, but strategy is about trade-offs. Is it an offensive or defensive? Is it for the long term or short term? Market attractiveness or ability to execute? Can we really execute in that realm? I have a client right now who sold their technology very well to technology companies. Now they're entering the world of the enterprise, and it's a different buyer. And they have to change a lot in their methodologies and go-to-market strategy in order to do just that. Revenue against expenses, those kinds of trade-offs. Are we going to invest for the long term, or are we going to watch our burn rate? So I have two assumptions. I'm not going to go through everything here because I've already named this. One is I think it's very helpful to have a framework, something that you can rely on to help guide your decisions over time. So it helps you to break a big problem down to bite-sized chunks. It helps you to stay focused. It helps you to understand where you need to do the data analysis and where you can use your own intuitions. Now, the other side to this is managing a discussion group is crucial. So what you all are raising here are a lot about managing that group. So I'm probably not going to spend as much time here, and let's try to spend some more time here because it seems like that's where the energy is. But those are the two assumptions I'm making about the art and science of strategic decision making. I want to just convey some of the barriers that I've noticed with groups that I've worked with. And actually, this comes right out of a lot of cognitive science, and you all are probably very familiar with it, but just see this as a little bit of a reminder. So, So I'm driving to a client. I'm a little late as usual, driving over Highway 17. I'm driving now, this was BC, before COVID. And I'm getting to the parking lot, and there are no parking spaces, and I'm moving around trying to find a parking space, and I'm getting a little bit more jittery. Then I come across this. What do you think of this driver?
Of course it's a Porsche.
Yeah, of course it's a Porsche. Yes, that actually rhymes. What else? What comes to mind?
Oh, the first thing I thought of is he parked that way because somebody else parked that way. and
You
didn't take
are,
that spot.
you are a very rare beast.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I am, I really am.
You really are.
I know that.
Yeah.
I'm an optimist, and I've had that happen to me, and I had a Porsche, and that fits in a small parking lot, and to do that on purpose, you'd have to be a real asshole, and I don't impute that.
Yes,
Still a
so,
Porsche, so we can still dislike them.
so the tendency is for you to jump to the conclusion that SOB didn't want to get their car scratched, so they took 2 parking spots, right?
That creates so many negative outcomes over and over and over in the world.
I agree.
Yeah.
And this is just an illustration of what fast and slow thinking is.
Yep.
So fast thinking is we jump to a conclusion, and we make that assumption strong in our mind, and it does create problems.
Oh, over and over.
And one of the things is if you think about it or look at it long enough, you come up with just your option, which is perhaps that was the only place they could squeeze their car in. Now, we don't know. I didn't find the driver. I just scratched the side of the car and drove it.
So now you're the asshole.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, you're just propagating it.
So what I think is, if I back up, there are kind of three primary barriers. One is this idea around cognitive biases, and I mean it from the standpoint of that we do jump to conclusions, and that our judgments they come intuitively to us, and most of the time they work, but sometimes they don't.
I would say that's actually not true. Most of the time these heuristics don't actually work, but we don't know that they don't work, so we think they work, and then we keep counting on them. And that's what, when you study cognitive biases, that happens a lot.
I agree with you, but I also know how to walk out the door, raise my arm, drive my car. There are many, many things that
Absolutely,
are, okay.
but if you scratched his car and felt good about
I
it.
did not.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
if you follow that path, which a lot of people do, they have thought they did the thing that guy deserved it, and they were wrong. And so,
Right.
or they treat the waiter really disrespectfully because they're in a bad mood, and they think they're right, and they go out and all that. Same thing, it happens, I've studied cognitive biases.
So
they're
we're in the same school.
Right, they're kind of
I'm just saying that we want to become aware of them.
Yeah, well, nearly impossible.
And, well, if I could finish my statement, please. Thank you. That's why we need good decision groups, because we can't see our bias. And so that's one of the barriers. And if we can use our peers to help us, we can actually update the implicit bias becomes explicit, and then we have more of a choice for how to do it. The other thing is about just emotional reactivity or social conformity, which are some of the things you all brought up here. Can I speak what's really on my mind? Is there emotional ability for me to do that in this room? Can I say what's the elephant in the room? And then the third is, somebody raised this about ego, is this what I would call the certainty gene. So we believe something so strongly, it's actually a sensation in our body, that we have this intuitive feeling of knowing. And actually, a guy named Robert Burton writes a whole book on this called On Being Certain. And it's that need for humility is one of the things that you want to cultivate in groups. So these are the three barriers. I have to point out this man here is he and Tversky really helped to identify this whole process of having these biases. And in his book, Fast and Slow Thinking, is what really you're trying to get more out of what I see is all there is.
Who wrote On Being Certain?
I'll give you a list. In fact, there's a list on the back of
Thank you.
yeah. So, confirmation or motivational bias, I love this quote, what the human being is best at is doing is interpreting all new information so that their prior conclusions remain intact. All right.
Is there any chance we can have access to this slide deck?
I think so, yeah, I'll make, that's something I can make happen, so.
Thank you.
All right, so we're liking the deck so far. Whew. But so that's confirmation bias. We talked about emotional reactivity in some of this list here. So here's a character that has in their head, if I say this, they'll go ballistic. That's just plain wrong. They don't get it. I must appear positive. They're pissing me off. All right? And these are, when these internal dialogues going on in your mind, it creates defensiveness. So defensiveness is either I fight back, or I withdraw, or I freeze. I was doing a presentation, I was working with a group of senior managers at a company, and lo and behold, you know, we're having this great talk back and forth and laughing. The CEO walks in, everything gets quiet, frozen. So also, somebody brings up the elephant in the room. I have to give Chris Argyris credit for this, because what happens is we create undiscussables, the elephants in the room. Now, the interesting logic of an undiscussable is it's, of course, raising the topic is undiscussable. But also embedded in that is the discussability of the undiscussable is undiscussable. Okay.
You can't talk about the thing you can't talk about.
No, let's can we find a way to talk about whatever is undiscussable? No, that's not even discussable. So so that's one of the issues we have with emotional reactivity, and I'll just jump ahead. Then the lack of on being certain by Robert Burton is this sense that certainty is this brain sensation that functions independently from rationality or reason. Okay. And he did a great study, one of these longitudinal studies, where he had all the students when the Challenger blew up years ago. He had all the students write down where were they and what were they doing. Turned it all in, went and wrote to all of his students let's say 15, 20 years later, said, I want you to tell me what you were doing during the Challenger event, where were you and what you were doing, and tell me how certain you are. And it's remarkable that probably 65% of the respondents were wrong, with a score of about 8 or 9 on their response. So I won't go into this, but that's the thing we're trying to avoid. We're trying to help people discover and make explicit a bias or biases. We're trying to also navigate the emotional reactivity. We all get triggered, we all get excited, or we all get mad. So how do we manage that? And then the third piece is really how do we keep our minds in exploratory versus being certain about what we're believing. I like to tell some of the engineering groups I work with is that when you're feeling it, that you know what's right, those antennas should come out of your head so that you can actually validate that intuition. Because they might be, but without that, a little bit of humility, that won't work. So, okay, I'm changing topics. This topic is about how to use a framework for leading a decision conversation or a strategic conversation. So, what I'm proposing here is if we have something that we can use to help define our terms, strategies, even a tough term to define, just that in and of itself can be helpful. So what is strategy? So I'm using this. It's around informed choice and a timely action. And a strategy is an integrated set of choices which positions any company to create transformational or sustainable advantage relative to competition with superior financial value. Now, superior financial value for many startups is just what the value is being proposed for their company. They may not have profits yet, or it's that now we need to show profit. So actually, I meant to put Roger Martin's the one who helped me understand that definition, and actually I'm going to be using some of his frameworks. So here's probably what I find one of the most useful frameworks. Now you can go off from this in many directions, but you pick a problem and then you try to figure out what are the options that we would have to either expanding our market or introducing a new product or whatever that might be for your company. And how this goes is you don't have to start anywhere, but what you want to do is understand what you're saying and where it lands in this cascade. So if we're talking about vision, we're talking about, our aspirations for how we're going to serve a market or customer or whatever that might be, that goes at the top. That's an aspiration, that's a goal. So like this one company that I just mentioned earlier, their aspiration is to move out of just selling their great software to technology companies, and where they want to play is in the enterprise. So that's where we will play. Now the next question is if you think about, that market space, how will we win? How will we get them to look at us, to really evaluate the product or service we have? What is it that we're going to offer that's differentiated from what everybody else is offering? So that's how we win in a chosen market. And then you think about your capabilities. So this is where in this company their capabilities are really great for network observability. And so now they are moving upstream from it. See, they have this capability. They think now, all enterprise companies will want to use this. So we can take our capability and frame it in a way that would serve the enterprise. Now my thing that I'm pushing with them is enterprise is like just the size of a company. What enterprise? And would that change how you would win in, let's say, financial services or manufacturing or whatever the chosen enterprise market you want to go into? And which one would be more ready to buy what you have versus others, so they can direct their sales force and go-to-market strategy? Then you come down to, well, okay, what are the kinds of processes and systems that we would have to fulfill this? Now, one of the things that is what's important to kind of think about is as you think through the framing of an option, you're really actually wanting to discover what are the optimal or what are the required capability or characteristics that I'd have to have in any one of these domains. And then you want to discover what do we most disbelieve that we could do and study that. So you are targeting where you're really going to do your research. Some of the stuff you've already known from past experience. So that's a framework. It's every time I've used it with the group, it helps them to differentiate different areas of a strategy, but all of these questions are related to that cascade of integrated choices that you're trying to make. So let's see if I can give an example. Well, here's a simple one. Southwest Airlines. Where are they gonna play? They're gonna play with the efficient-oriented traveler. Business people, people looking for quick trips from point to point. And they're gonna serve both medium-sized cities and large cities, but at their secondary airports. Now, that was years ago, but that was their initial sort of approach. And how are we gonna win? We're gonna have frequent, reliable departures and very low price. Okay, that's how they're gonna win. Then they had all these things from doing that cascade that was gonna be sustaining their advantage. Automated ticketing, limited passenger services, fast gate turnaround, lean gate and ground crews, and standardized fleet. So they're not gonna have all these, I don't know what Southwest is doing now, but that was their initial sort of, how are they going to get into the market? This is Algeo Pharmaceuticals. They had a current strategy. I don't know if you can read this so well, and I don't want to read through it all. But basically, they had a winning aspiration to extend patients' lives and increase the quality of life. Their customer was patients, prescribers was their channel, and their product was a prescription medicines in 3 areas that they were working with. And then they had all this other stuff. Their growth was slowing down. They were going, what do we do? So they came up with 3 options that they went off to study. But they used this methodology to help them define what those options were. Option 1 was diabetes expert. So our winning aspiration is to extend diabetic patients' lives. Our customers are going to be patients with diabetes. Our channel is going to primary care physicians, to doctors and pharmacists, and on and on. That was option 1. Option 2 is the Petri dish. So they were going to develop molecules with the potential to fundamentally alter treatment regimes. Their customer was drug development companies, highly scientific research that they were going to use, and they were going to focus in North America and Europe. Okay? Now they didn't make the decisions on any of these yet. Then they had a third option, the commercialization engine, to turn the very best scientific advance in effective new drugs to effectively treat diseases, extend patients' lives. So they were still going to focus on customers or channels, doctors and pharmacies, and on and on. So they basically tried to figure out, they wanted to have robust understanding of what they were really trying to do. It wasn't that let's commercialize, and let's have a commercialization engine. They tried to describe what that is. Now, I give these examples only to help you see that I'm not talking about how they made these decisions. I'm talking about they used a framework to help them structure their conversation. Now, there are many different frameworks, and I can go through these. Let's see. Well, this is actually the process by which you would do what I just talked about, but I'm not going to go into that. But you can use the 4 Ps marketing mix, you can use a prioritization mix, BCG's matrix. There are a lot of them, and people just play with some of these. They change the words around, they find something that fits for them. But the point is that they have a methodology that they're going to structure their conversations around. So here's what I'd like you to do.
Always about work your way back or up or down kind of a thing.
So we're going to implement Salesforce.
Right.
Okay. So that's here. How does that help with your capabilities? And to what degree? So you can move it in any direction.
I have this new business idea that I want to do. I just started on it, barely I threw it in where I will play, because I knew that, right, I knew the space and that sort of thing. And then I hadn't jumped out to how we, when we chose markets, and just wrote one sentence down, but, I think this is a brilliant way to think of a new business, a strategy, like, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, what became apparent to me is that we almost, at least our shop, almost always starts at the top. And it becomes somewhat arduous to work your way down versus grabbing something in the middle and forming back up and down actually might be a more viable way to have that discussion.
The point is, it helps you to break it down to bite-sized chunks so that you can get your arms around it, because we talk about vision and mission and those big terms. But then this helps you to get a little bit more precise about, okay, in that context, how will this play? Yep. Any others? Reactions? Also inviting the, yes, Leon.
Yeah, so, just, thinking about putting this model of making a decision in the context of actually implementing the decision. I don't know if it's part of the strategic planning.
Oh, yes.
Processes and people.
Well, this becomes the map for then you move it into a particular function or area in your organization, and they end up using that as a way to even do their own. So it can be hierarchical in that manner. And so it does help people. So as an example, I worked with an HR organization that was doing a new strategy for the year, and we worked it through this. So where are they playing? Well, they're going to play with employees and the company. They have two primary customers, and how will they really win in that arena? So they just kind of went through the same kind of framing. All right, I'm going to move on because I want to talk about how to talk. In your handout is a self-assessment for you to use in your own organizations to talk about where the pain point might be in your strategy. And that is that. So I'm gonna scenario planning, company strategy, blah, blah, blah. Facilitating decision groups. So let's get to this stuff. So one of the key things, I worked with a storage company in the valley, and the CEO would bang his head against the wall because people would come forward with their proposals and it all had an inside view. And there wasn't enough of this outside view to ask, where else is this similar, and how can we help to validate an inside view? Sometimes we focus too much on the outside, trying to do the best practices, but we don't have a sense of really what is it that the inside view, what do we know about our organization and company? So that's one key component to this. Now, I want to share, this comes from Tetlock around super forecasting. And if you read through some of the materials he came up with, which is interesting, is what I want to just name is what you're trying to do with your decision group, or what I'm working with my core leadership teams, is building the capabilities for them to gather evidence from a variety of sources, to embrace the diversity of ideas that are in the room, to break down the problems into smaller parts, which I think that strategy framework helps, to adopt an attitude of humility and openness, to use probabilistic thinking. So oftentimes we get into binary, yes or no, and actually I have one team that they are launching their new product in January, and they're actually placing money bets on using their confidence about how well they're doing. So they're it's great bottles of wine or whatever it is, but it's a way to kind of get people in the game. They have something to lose, skin in the game. another client I'm working with, they have had several turnovers at the senior levels in the organization, and they haven't done, what are our lessons from that? What do we need to change? Encourage independent thinking. So work alone, then bring the group together. Don't get the group in the room and say, hey, let's brainstorm. Balance advocacy and inquiry, or inquiry and advocacy. And also you know that the use of quantitative methods wisely. You don't want to use them all over the place. Intuition plays out in this as well. So these things are cultivating now from a whole nother point of view. Not another point of view, but another person who thinks about this is Annie Duke. You know who Annie Duke is? She is a cognitive scientist who is also a world-renowned poker player. She wrote a book called Thinking in Bets. And what she talks about is what was most helpful to her is that she was with a pod of other poker players and they learned from one another. And these are some of the key things they use. So guess what? Diverse perspectives. Focus on accuracy, not being right. Pre-agreed on rules and norms about how we're going to work with one another. Be accountable for the decisions that you made. Don't try to, well, that was, Michael's idea about it, that the core is making these decisions. Constructive feedback, focus on process, not outcomes. Interesting point that she brings is that we will review a decision and we'll bias it if it was successful, but the decision process could have been messy and terrible. They just got lucky. And so that's also hard to do, but important, and commitment to learning and improvement. So how do you get people to start doing that? Well, we make meaning all the time. And so one tool I have found that I help people begin to integrate into their own meaning-making capability is called the ladder of inference. So what does the ladder of inference do? Well, I show you a picture of a Porsche parked between two parking spaces, and we jump to conclusions. The data is the picture. This is the pool of available data in the world. I show you the picture, you draw a conclusion. Porsche drivers, they're just so selfish. But what you want to understand, that intuitive loop goes through a series of steps. We select certain data and not other data. That's based upon the beliefs or mindsets or biases or point of views that we hold in our mind. And oftentimes they're just below the surface of awareness. And so that becomes a perceptual frame, and we use it to make an interpretation, and then we draw a conclusion. And so this is what Kahneman says about what we see is all there is. That's what happens. And what we want to be able to do in our own minds, as well as or help people to do, is break it down. What leads you to that? What data are you using to base that decision on? How are you interpreting that? So you actually break that down. We all carry our own ladder of inference. We're all doing that all the time. And in fact, here's an example. So this is a company that was entering a slow growth period in the market. And they're trying to figure out what they're going to do. So they got customer information. If they summed it up, it says, I really like Vision Tech. It has been an innovative leader in this business for a long time, but I'm coming under increasing cost pressure and have to make trade-offs. Okay. It's probably seen this before in customer data. Sally, our VP of engineering, goes, whew, all right, I really like Vision Tech. It's innovative. The customer will stick with us as long as we continue to innovate and lead. Innovation and leadership are the most crucial avenues to pursue. However, Bill over here as the as the head of sales, goes, I'm coming under increasing cost pressure. That's what Bill pulls out. Customers are going to migrate away. Customer wants lower costs. We've got to get our costs down so we can be price competitive. This was the argument going back and forth, you know, in one of these things. Now, I interviewed them, and I asked them to tell me what was going on in the back of their mind about each other. So Bill goes, so we risk losing our customers. Sally is pushing her agenda. She's always going to blow the budget again. And I've got to fight for doing what's right for the company. All right? Sally, on the other hand, goes, we got to innovate. Bill is pushing his agenda. He wants to get costs down. This is going to be a problem. He's being political and short-sighted. I have to fight for what's right. So how do you get out of that? All right? And that's what I want to kind of talk about, is what we do in those kinds of situations, because that is kind of what we were talking about earlier. So, one of the things that Tetlock teaches super forecasting groups to do so that they can make better predictions is help them with advocacy and inquiry, and I'm going to add one summary. This is the trifecta for productive communication. And it's going to sound easy to do, but it's hard. It takes work and discipline to do this. Now you can, if you commit yourself and make yourself vulnerable for feedback and all those kinds of things, we can self-correct. So, inquiry is my ability to ask questions designed to solicit the other person's point of view, opinions, judgment, concerns, priorities, ideas, whatever that is. It's my ability to inquire to get inside their head. Advocacy is I'm able to share my expertise and viewpoint or assessments about a situation in order to influence how others see things and to negotiate on behalf of key concerns that I have. So I'm not suggesting that you throw away or you give up your point of view, your expertise. And then summary is our ability to sort through the central aspects of these messages and be able to paraphrase. Now what I mean by that is you get in a group and you're like, there's all this talking going on, we should do this, that. But someone in the room could just say, okay, wait a minute, let's just summarize, what bets do we have on the table? You want to do X for these reasons, you want to do Y for these reasons, and you want to do Z for those reasons. Is there any other options we haven't considered? Easy move. But we tend not to kind of back off a little bit and look at it from the balcony, what's going on in the conversation. So what I'm suggesting is you take this skill, these skills, using this framework to help conversations be more informed. And what do I mean by balancing advocacy, inquiry, and summary? It's the ability to be able to state your point of view with your reasoning and make your points one at a time. Don't go on for 5 minutes. Allow it to be chunked a little bit. My ability to ask open-ended questions, to explore your reasoning, to solicit a range of ideas. Are we missing anything around the room? And encourage challenge. So one of the skills that I try to give people who are proposing an idea is their ability to propose it, but then say, hey, what are your reactions? What am I missing? How do you see it differently? So that this becomes cyclical and virtuous. In summary, again, is our ability to step back and say, okay, let me see if I understand what you're saying. I have gone to the Long Now Foundation up in San Francisco. They'll have usually science-oriented discussions, not just hard sciences, but social sciences as well. And they were having a conversation about making new life forms. All right? And there was one person that was proposing that we restricted very strongly, we put very tough requirements in order to have a lab, and we have strong protocols. The other person is saying, no, it should be more open source. People are going to do this anyway. So before they started, there wasn't going to be a debate, it was going to be a discussion. And how they got into that is they flipped a coin, and one person went first and said what their primary advocacy is, and the other person had to summarize what they heard. And then they reversed it. Advocacy and summary. That kind of laid out the lesson. It's not about a debate, it's about discovering what the limits are of our own thinking, what are the risks of either side, that kind of thing. I did this with an engineering team. Same process. Were they going to make or buy? And they had religious points of views about this. And they ended up buying. But I wasn't involved in making the decision other than helping to structure the conversation. So, I'd like you to get with a different person. Do I have time? Yes. We have 15 more minutes?
I don't know what time it is.
It's 1 o'clock.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay. I want you to get with another person, somebody different. And person A is going to say what their strategy is. I think we should invest in cloud native delivery systems. Person B only gets to ask open-ended questions for a period of time. Now, the open-ended questions, I'm giving you a cheat sheet on page 6 so that you can just say, well, tell me more. That's a good open-ended question. What else? Start with that. But not only that, probe. So you could say, see, I've seen this before. I've seen other people do this before. They ran into trouble. How will you manage X? That's a good open-ended question. So you can say what your concerns are, but ask an open-ended question. I'm going to give you about 3 minutes each, and then we'll come back to it. So,
Nobody does it.
before we depart, let me ask you, do you have any questions or reactions or, I don't know, yes?
I got a question, not particular to what we just did, because that was one-on-one, but to the sequence of sharing, because you're talking to a room of many CEOs at the top, and there's a power play. Because I will often see a CEO start a conversation and then ask, and there's sometimes an implicit bias or push that I feel the room trying to stay on the good side. Do you ever encourage the CEO to go last, put out forth the problem and let everybody else, or do you?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, because the only thing I heard was something about, flipping the coin, but I just
No,
wondered,
no,
what's the sequence in this?
yeah, so there's hierarchy, and then
Yes.
there's also, embedded in that is a need to get acceptance.
Yes.
Okay, and so what's really crucial is if there is a question or a topic or an agenda, is make sure everybody has some time to think about it before you start. And I really encourage people to write things down or type it, whatever. And then I think it is helpful, what you just said, is the CEO go last. Or help the CEO ask good inquiry questions. So I can think of the CEO of the storage company I worked with. Incredible, large group. Somebody comes forward with, their product idea, whatever, and he would just sit there and go, so how do you think about X? And what did, and just it was just great sort of questioning. He didn't agree with it, but his ability to actually think about how this person's thinking about it, and then he gave some feedback, and then went to the next. So I think that's helpful to structure, just exactly what you said. Yep.
Actually, interesting kind of insight on that. One of our investors is Christopher Risley. He's in town here. He's like a former operating partner of Bessemer Ventures and a 9-time CEO with like 3 IPOs. Like, has seen every challenge under the sun. And at one point, we kind of experienced a similar challenge. And one of the things he encouraged me to do was, particularly with kind of leaders of a vertical within the company, is really very rarely use veto power and really let them kind of drive their own expectations, kind of decision making. They will be the ones that will best know kind of timelines, resource requirements, and really just kind of ask questions and make sure that they're thinking about it from all sides, and also provide the space so that they can come back and kind of amend their assumptions,
Yes.
but let them be the most credible party in the room. And only if you very, very, very adamantly disagree with that decision should you use that veto power.
That's beautiful.
I thought it was really interesting because I think oftentimes as a CEO, you feel like you need to be the smartest one in the room, like, you know, helping everybody kind of quarterback everything. And the reality is, like, you didn't hire these brilliant people to think that you're smarter than them. You know, you need to kind of like give them that space to own the decisions, own the results.
Great, I'm gonna have you call a CEO I'm working with that's that's really great.
I think a good CEO ends up hopefully being the dumbest person in the room.
Yes.
If you're doing your job, then there's this point in time where like, why am I even here?
I'm a genius.
They're all geniuses, they don't need me.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Any other reactions or comments about the use of this skill with this in mind? Yes?
Well, through the questions, I realized that there was a key data point that I was missing in, you know, my, so it was helpful. It was
Yeah.
really helpful.
Yeah, that's the essence of it. It will also, if someone's asking me good open-ended questions, it will help me to explore my own thinking. Yes?
Yeah, I would kind of close it with my point. So like tailor the elephant in the room, since I have a very global experience. I was working in Australia, Africa, Europe, now here 8 years. So I saw hundreds of meetings where like everybody's just like pleasing the CEO and just like, oh, everything is awesome and whatever, picture perfect. And what I really learned is just like when you're the guy who asking the tough questions, or notices like, well, I see some risk here, or challenges, you know, our competition is doing this, and we are just like doing same old whatever. That you're gonna be the guy who basically asking the tough questions and open up the communication for what's really the key, like what's the pain point in the room for the company when you're going forward. So that's what I learned during those experiences.
That's beautiful.
9 out of 10 meetings are just like, well, everybody's just like, great, pleasing,
Yeah.
let's go, let's keep doing whatever we are doing. So that's not the winning strategy. So I encourage you that's being critical and asking the right questions.
And thank you for raising this, because sometimes this feels like it's, can be too generous, I could say more, but actually asking good probing questions like, you're struggling with this, what is your thinking about how you would overcome that particular issue? That can be super helpful, because maybe they haven't thought it through. There was somebody, yes?
I'm not so sure. I mean, I think sometimes it's better to go outside of the company to find the solutions, because I know we're not a tech company. We're an old-fashioned manufacturing company, and the people are brilliant and they are geniuses, but they're geniuses at what they do. They don't necessarily, as a group, can all figure it out to get together and work it all out so that someone else is going to buy it, who they don't even know outside of the business. They don't know, they don't follow the flow of why someone would buy what we make.
I think that's really.
We all love it,
Yeah,
We
yeah.
love it. We all love it. We're crazy.
But we need the outside view.
Yeah.
We need that. We have to have that in this, to have accurate decisions or accuracy in our point of view. Yes?
I think one of the challenges is that we're using the old traditional methods of communicating and working in groups at the executive level. What I like to promote is working at what I call the right level of fidelity and working visually. So one of the things that I've noticed in my years of working on wicked problems and projects is that when you have leaders in the room, the minute that you get everybody standing up and holding a Post-it note in their hand and putting it on a board and discussing it and pointing at things, you've democratized that process because everybody has sort of the power of the Post-it note, right?
Beautiful.
And then what I propose is that like a series of almost like templates that structurally take you through investigating the challenges. So when you talk about the answers, like in your group, there could be research that you've done, customer research that says, oh, you know, people would like to have, you know, a coffee cup with 4 handles on it or whatever it is. You can then put that into the group and say, so how hard would it be to make a coffee cup with 4 handles? Or have we done that before? Or put it into a quadrant of, this would be really easy to make and would be really cheap to produce and would, you know, people would pay a lot of money for it. So it's like, maybe this is something we might explore. That looks good, but this thing over here is super hard to make and we can't really charge that much for it. So if you're in that group with those people and you're working on a board or you're working in some kind of visual thing, that becomes a very organic process of evaluating your different decisions and the direction, and then forcing people to even come up and say, so what would be the team that would implement this? How feasible is this? And so on, and you work through that whole process as a team, rather than question and answer, or you know, receive information, make a decision, and move on.
That's great, and a lot of a lot of what has done is we do the same similar thing because you're trying to understand the conditions that would need to be true, and it's best to democratize that process or flatten it. Go ahead.
I was just going to say a lot of this, we've gone over today. It doesn't just have to be within a business. It works in relationships too, whether it be, you know, asking open-ended questions, getting external perspectives occasionally. I don't know about Post-it notes, but
That's what your fridge is for.
Yeah, but eventually, and repeating what you hear the other person saying, so that you know they know that you've heard it. I find those work both in business and in relationships.
I do too. Yeah. So I think that's the end. Coming back, my intent was really to create a space for you all to have some discussion. And we talked about strategic decision making and integrating your strategic framework with applying skills of good group talk. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.